Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and this is the LG Phoenix from AT&T. It's AT&T's version of the LG Optimus One, which has now made its way onto pretty much every major carrier in the US. So they've been solid mid-range Android devices. They ship with Android 2.2. This particular version has LG's custom UI and pretty much the same specs and features as all the other Optimus One phones, 3.2 megapixel camera and so on and so forth. So I've been testing it out. I'm going to do a full review and go into a lot of detail and tell you the pros and the cons, talk about web browsing, camera, and different things like that. So let's get on to that. It's the review of the LG Phoenix from AT&T. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com. Let's go check it out. Okay, so here is the LG Phoenix. It's the AT&T version of the LG Optimus One. And really, if you've seen one of these Optimus phones, you've seen them all because they all have basically the same hardware design. Kind of different color schemes some of them have, but really the shell is basically the same design. So you have the 3.2-inch display on the front, the four Android buttons, and these are physical buttons, they're not capacitive touch buttons. And then the same silver design that kind of tapers off towards the top, 3.5mm headphone jack, power lock, or power screen lock and unlock button. One thing that's kind of different about this version of the Optimus One is that there is no dedicated camera button. And I was surprised to see that because I think most, if not all, of these Optimus One phones have a dedicated camera key, and so I was surprised to see that this one didn't. Now, whether or not that's a negative kind of just depends on what you prefer. I personally like having a dedicated camera button. Not only is it easier when actually taking a picture, but it's just easier to access the camera rather than, now you have to have a shortcut on the home screen and then swipe to the page that has it. It's not a huge deal, but I was surprised to find that it didn't have that camera button. Speaking of the camera, it's a 3.2 megapixel camera. It has an autofocus. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but first of all, if we just start with the home screen here, it is Android 2.2, but you can see it has sort of this LG UI, and so there's a couple of design elements that it brings, and I've said this before on the other Optimus One reviews that I've done, that this UI is not very heavy. So some people hate really heavy UIs, some people it doesn't bother them, but if you don't like UIs, this one isn't too heavy, so it shouldn't bother you too much. Of course you do have other options, but so you have this dock at the bottom, and you can customize the shortcuts. So you can see I've switched out this second one from the left and I've changed it to a shortcut to Twitter. And then you can also customize the other three as well. Once you go to the menu, the app drawer, it's divided into sections. So you have applications, which are the applications that came with the phone, and then a section for downloads. So any app that you download won't actually go to the application section. It'll go to the download section, which seems kind of confusing. You can customize this, so you can change the names of these categories. You can move the apps around to a different category. It's very tedious and annoying, but you do actually at least have that option. Besides that, with LG's custom UI, besides the dock and that sort of customized app drawer, really the only thing you have are these toggle buttons in the notification bar for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all that. And that I don't think is a big deal either, because most people download toggle widgets for that kind of thing anyway, so it kind of saves you the space on your phone for not having to download that widget or that app. Now you can see it also comes with this custom clock. I didn't download that. It comes with that. That's a custom LG widget. I like LG's UI. I think it adds just enough to make Android a little prettier and add some widgets and some apps that are very functional, but it doesn't cover up Android. It doesn't make it all colorful and cartoonish, which personally I don't mind those UIs that do that, like TouchWiz for example, but not everyone likes those, and so it's nice for people that don't like that. Now, one other thing that this UI comes with this phone comes with is LG's custom keyboard, and I think this is probably the third Optimus One phone that I've tested out, and it's the first one I've seen that comes with this custom keyboard. Now, you can always switch to the stock Android keyboard. And of course you can download whichever keyboard you want to, but it does have the LG keyboard. you know, while I've been using it, it's okay. The stock Android keyboard is better in my opinion, but you know, it's not too bad. I like having the sound on whenever I'm typing, except I hate this sound, and so, but again, that's kind of a personal thing. Fox jumps over the lazy dog. I know Aaron does the really creative sentences with the quick brown fox, but I can never think of anything, and so I always just do the normal sentence. Of course, this came out horribly, so you can see I did type kind of slow, and I was very careful, you know, and tried to make sure that I pressed the correct key. But as you can see, you know, I have a comma, dog turns into did, lay, and then did again. So you know, I didn't really think it was the best keyboard. I tested it out and I did use it, but after a while I switched back to the stock Android keyboard because it's just better. In my opinion, after testing out both of them, I found that this one is definitely better. Of course, now I have a couple of errors already. Fox jumps over the lazy dog. So, not perfect, but it was better, and I can tell you after testing it out that it is definitely better than the custom LG keyboard. So that's one other thing that this UI comes with, but you don't have to use it because it does still have the stock Android keyboard. Just a little bit on this display. It has a resolution of 320 by 480, 3.2 inches, like I said. So it's a little bit smaller. You know, I found that the small screen hasn't been too big of a deal in terms of, like, you know, typing on the keyboard, because if it is too small, you can always switch to landscape for the keyboard and it's larger. It has a low resolution, so you can already see that the text is pixelated, pictures are a little rough, but again, I've always been impressed by these phones overall, which I'll, you know, get into through the course of the review, but the display also is still, you know, clear and very bright. So while I'm talking about the performance of the phone overall, it ships with a 600 megahertz processor. All of these Optimus One phones, they have the same processor, and I've been very impressed by it. It's, you know, I don't really have to deal with a lot of lag. As you can see, it's pretty speedy opening of the menu. The transitions work very well. It's not choppy whenever it's a, you know, transition or it's sliding up or down or to the side. Everything's very smooth. In terms of, you know, multitasking and having several applications open at once, I haven't really had, you know, that big of a problem with it. I can have multiple applications open and everything still runs pretty smoothly. So, you know, it's still a mid-range device, and so it doesn't have the 1 gigahertz Snapdragon. It doesn't have a dual-core processor. 600 megahertz, you know, seems like it's kind of on the low end, but it still performs better than my expectations, and so I'm very impressed with that. So if that's one thing that you're worried about, don't be, because there's no lag. Multitasking is easy. You can have several applications running. My voice just cracked. That was awesome. And you can have several widgets and it doesn't really slow it down at all. So I'm very impressed with that aspect of the phone.